What is up, my tricksters? It's your friendly neighborhood Yu-Gi-Oh! Superhero back again today with another discussion topic video. Hand traps are kind of weird right now. We're going to talk about it. But before we get into that, Frank has a message for you. Take it away, Frank.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to show you how to support this channel, because if you don't do it, I'm going to put a Cyber Dragon in your hardware, and it's going to bite you every time you buy something that isn't from the spring store. You hear me? Now buy a shirt with my face on it. Here's how you're going to do that. You're going to come over here. You see this little black dot? You're going to click on it. And you see this? It's going to bring you to a white page. Okay, there it goes. Then it's going to bring you to a page. You see all this stuff? This one right here is the one you want to buy, because it's got my face on it. You might also be able to support this channel by, going and clicking in the description of any video and buying a sleeve from your playmats. But they don't have to, if they don't have my face on it, I'm gonna be mad about it. Understood? Now, excuse me, I'm gonna go glare at Ben some more.
Thank you, Frank. Buy a t-shirt. He's getting creepier. This time he was doing the noise for 20 minutes before I was trying to sleep. It was weird. Buy a t-shirt. He's still creepy, Frank. I said it. I don't care. Stop glaring at me. Anyway, we're talking hand traps. This format. So, we have before we can talk really about hand traps right now, there is two major decks we need to talk about right now, and those major decks are, as seen here, Sprite and Tier Elements. These are the two top decks per se, and I do use per se purposefully in that because the previous meta decks are still around and still very powerful, and still can be a pain in the ass if you're not playing a meta deck or one of those previous meta decks. We're kind of in a weird area right now. Like, you have Tier Elements and Sprite, which are like tier 1, and everything that was tier 1 just dropped to tier 1.5, if that makes any sense. At least that's how I look at it. I've been kind of playing online a lot, trying to rebuild some of my older decks and try to format them for the modern game, for the modern era that we're currently in, and it's been a bit of a challenge. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about something I've noticed with hand traps. Now, I've heard other people talk about this stuff, but I just wanted to kind of mention it, something I've kind of got into a peek of. So first of all, we got to talk about some of the hand traps that are specific to each deck, to the two main decks that we're talking about today, which are Sprite and Tier Elements. Each of th's have, oh boy, I'll just not go on there. Just gave away the goat there. What I was gonna say is the weird thing about right now this format is a lot of players are talking about board breakers are the answer, which if you guys want a discussion more on that, that'll be the video from last week, but you guys can go check that out. If you want, it's just me talking about all the board breakers that are kind of playable right now, or pseudo playable. And this one I'm talking about hand traps specifically because we're kind of in this weird spot with hand traps. Hand traps are still kind of needed, and they still serve value in the game, frustratingly so. But the two archetypes in question feel like they need a whole separate, different line of hand traps than they normally would, which is something that's kind of new, I think, because usually hand traps have kind of been, as they've just kind of been useful against everything. You know what I mean? and even if they weren't the most useful, except there was always a handful of decks that are I don't care about that one hand trap that's being played. You know what I mean? Because I've got Dangers don't really care about Ash Blossom because it would just be a waste. Because it's just, cool, you stop Bigfoot. Thunderbird, Nessie, it's an example like that. However, Ash Blossom, it still says screw you to everything else as an example, right? Now, for Sprite, I have noticed something that, it's been mentioned obviously that with their hand traps, you actually want to go a completely different route than you would say with Tier Elements. With Tier Elements, you want to go for more your usual kinds of hand traps, like Imperm and Effect Veiler. These guys are pretty effective against Tier Elements because you're stopping the cards that would mill, like Miru or Rhino Heart. who would give you those free mills at the front. And of course, with tier elements, a lot of players are now playing DD Crow in the main because this can hit multiple decks. If your opponent's trying to bring a monster back from the grave, you drop the DD Crow. Oh, it's gone forever. Sorry. And that's all well and good. And tier elements, they have to, like, the tier elements all have this effect that they themselves have to be used as the fusion material. So, like, if I was going to make, like you guys saw my Shadal tier element budget deck, I want to use Sheeran here to fuse into Winda. Well, if they DD Crow the Sheeran, I don't get the Winda. So, that's all well and good. And DD Crow actually does have some use against the Sprite deck, but not as much as it does against tier elements. And a lot of other decks just really aren't going to care about this card, right? And then, of course, alternatively, if you look at the cards that are really good against Sprite, because they have a very different strategy. Like, all right, so for against the Sprite deck, you want to play Gamma or Ghost Ogre. And the reason why you might want to use these cards is because these guys are not only negation, well, in the case of Gamma, negation, but also a removal, which can be valid because if you take away their ability to have a level 2 monster, like, let's say their starter monster is Diva, right? Deep Sea Diva. We've been seeing a lot of her popping up in that deck, right? If I Gamma that card, then she goes away. They don't have a level 2. Their turn kind of ends unless they have an extender, right? And then, like with Ghost Ogre, they make the gigantic Sprite. Well, I Ghost Ogre that. He dies. Oh, your turn's over. Unless they have an extender. And then, of course, Ash Blossom is just kind of universally useful against a lot of players. A lot against things. Like tier elements, you can stop the mills, like I said, with the beginning with Rhino Heart and Miru. And then, of course, you could, against Sprite, you can stop Blue, Jet, the quick play spell that summons one from the deck. Its name escapes me at the moment, but you get the idea. However, it's just kind of funny that you have cards that are specifically good against them, like Gamma and DD Crow are specifically good against the respective decks, but the overlap just is lackluster. And it's kind of a funny thing in this particular format because, I mean, it's happened before, don't get it wrong, but, it's happened before in the game, obviously. It's just kind of funny to me at the moment that we have, like, a bunch of hand traps that are going around in the game, and it's almost like your sideboard is going to end up being, and this is just a vibe I have. This isn't anything kind of, I wouldn't call this any evidence base. But I feel like your hand traps are about to be something that is strictly a sideboard thing. Like, you're going to side in something that you think you're going to see the most of the time. Like, I expect Sprite and tier elements, right? So maybe I side in Effect Veiler and Ash Blossom. 6 hand traps, and then depending on what I'm up against, my sideboard's just going to become, okay, cool, swapping out weapons for something more effective, basically. Like, oh, cool, I'm up against Sprite. We're going to take out the Effect Veilers, and we're going to throw in the Ghost Ogres. Which some players have already been doing that, but, it's just... But what I'm getting at is I think eventually it's going to be the whole sideboard. Like, I have this feeling, this gut feeling that eventually it's going to turn into, like, how long until we get, like, a hand trap that's basically MST, or Twin Twister or something like that. I mean, they're already kind of working on it. Some of our hand traps can do some amazing stuff. I'm just saying. I don't know. That might be a conversation for another day, but I wanted you guys to give me your input. What do you think? Is this kind of is anyone else noticed this kind of funny thing about hand traps right now? Is that they seem to be like, oh, you have this set for this deck, you have this set for this deck, and then it's like, but deck building's a little bit difficult right now. And then, of course, like I said, everybody's talking board breakers over hand traps, but a lot of players are also doing 50-50. A lot of players are also, like, going full in the hand traps. It's just a very... Yu-Gi-Oh's in an odd time. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you give me one of those thumbs up. Make sure you leave a comment down below. I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about hand traps in this format. Yeah, and as always, I will catch you in the next one. Peace.